Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Thomas H. Johnson edition, and we now turn to poem 656. The name of it is Autumn. You guys remember when we did 131? Besides the autumn, poets sing a few prosaic days, a little this side of the show and that side of the haze, a few incisive mornings, a few aesthetic eves, gone by Mr. Bryant's goldenrod and Mr. Thompson's sheaves. Still is the bustle in the brook, sealed are the spicy valves, mesmeric fingers softly touch the eyes of many elves. Perhaps a squirrel may remain, my sentiments to share. Grant me, O Lord, a sunny mind, thy windy will to bear. And you guys will maybe remember when we did 483 as well. A solemn thing within the soul to feel itself get right. The golden hang while further up the maker's ladder stop, and in the orchard far below you hear a being drop. A wonderful to feel the sun still toiling at the cheek. You thought was finished, cool of eye and critical of work. He shifts the stem a little to give you your core a look, but solemnless to know your chance in harvest moves a little nearer every sun, the single to some lives. When this poem was published in 8 September of 1892 in Youth's Companion, it was actually called Autumn. Of course, Emily herself never called it that. I want to, though, suggest this poem is more than it appears. Some of you will say, well, this is obviously a poem about autumn. We shan't deny it. I mean, the name of it is Autumn, is the title of the poem, or the first line of the poem. But I'm going to make the argument this poem was written during the American Civil War, during a time when Emily knew about the grotesque death that was happening. And so I want you to write that down as you get ready to enjoy this poem as well, because there's a second level of reading here, okay? If you think about a nation as being 4 seasons, you would clearly think about the summer as being its high part, right? Its best part. What would you think of autumn then? Oh, that's right before the winter. What is the winter of a nation? Well, that's its death. And during the American Civil War, there were any number of people who asked, is this the end? Is this the end of America? I think you can read this poem and have that perspective as well. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hoping you worked with our set of introductory comments that we provided, as well as the previous 655 poems. We just finished with 655. Before this, There Is Not. Again, the symbolism here of fall or autumn, I want you to jot down. The blood and the death that will be referenced here, of course, the battlefield, the potentiality. This poem in 1862. So think about that. We're in the very middle, if you will, or soon to be the middle, of the American Civil War. I want you to notice then the violent, can I say that with quotation marks around it? The violent language of this poem that celebrates autumn. The name of it is Autumn. The hue of it is blood. An artery upon the hill, a vein along the road, great globules in the alleys. And oh, the shower of stain when winds beset the basin and spill the scarlet rain. It sprinkles bonnets far below. It gathers ruddy pools. Then eddies like a rose away upon vermilion wheels. Now, I think there's a whole lot of Keats going on in this poem. We'll actually get to autumn in Keats's poem in his classic at the end of our lecture here. But I want you to first of all notice the quotation marks around the word autumn. I think that's significant. And I think that Emily is suggesting something by saying there's some symbolism possibly going on in this poem. Notice she says the name dash of it dash is autumn. Now, autumn is mentioned in 13 poems. We'll come back to it at the end here to give you a little list of some other poems that will be of significance in the study of autumn. But then right away, notice the hue of it is blood. And then all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, autumn, and all the leaves turning brown and red, of course, kind of looks like blood. But notice here, blood capitalized. And I want you to study as well the verbs of this poem. And then I want you to notice the anatomical power of this poem. Physical bodies are being destroyed when she writes this poem because, of course, the great American Civil War. We can't help but think, of course, of Walt Whitman and drum taps. Whitman, of course, Emily's contemporary, although she never saw him, met him, or read any of his stuff, apparently. But we've done our full series on the poetry of Walt Whitman. We call that Talks with Walt. And you guys will remember that when we did all that study of drum taps, the poems of Whitman, those war poems of Whitman, some of the same language getting played here. The hue of it is blood, an artery upon the hill, a vein along the road. It's as if she begins to bring together the dead of the Civil War and the dead of the leaves that are falling. And her confluence here is remarkable. Great, notice both capitalized, globules in the alleys. Now, it's interesting the way she'll say this, because, of course, you can talk about the alleys here being the roads. You could talk about the alleys being, of course, within the streets. And it may be the key word of the poem. Easily skipped over if you haven't circled it, do it now. But, oh, see that word? We call our series Chats with Emily for a reason. It's as if she's conversing with you. And as she's talking, she goes, oh, the shower of stain. Now, of course, stain is interesting, right? I mean, when we get to 658, we're going to have whole gulfs of red and fleets of red as the opening line of that poem. The shower of stain. Of course, blood stains, but so do nations, with the grievances of a civil war and the death, the horrifying death that was a part of that. What is all of this? What's happening? When winds upset, notice again, these words are powerful. Upset the basin and spill the scarlet rain. Again, her verbs are remarkable. Spilling, upsetting, right? Scarlet? And of course, rain isn't scarlet, is it? I mean, normally we don't have blood raining down, unless we're speaking symbolically of the tragedies of the battles that have already occurred by 1862. Notice she continues, it sprinkles bonnets, the rain, far below. It gathers ruddy pools. Of course, this use of the word ruddy. Then eddies like a rose. And then the key word, maybe, away. It may be as if she's making this argument that in the same way that summer leaves because autumn arrives to get ready for us to get ready for winter, is it possible that the terrible conflict that she's aware of, without ever mentioning one time the actual battle of the Civil War's horrors, right? Upon vermilion wheels, we'll get vermilion in poem 930 and in poem 1676, the other two times she uses it. Notice again all the colorations of this poem. Well, we won't read them now. Mark them down. Her autumn poems that we'll come back to this poem. 748, 1346, 1516, 1682. She'll mention autumn, and finally 1709. In all of those, she's playing with autumn. I think the message of this poem is possibly two messages. Obviously, autumn is the time of Red Death, no doubt, right? Because everything dies as we move towards winter. But I think there's as well this proclamation, this forecasting, this can't end well, right? That she was concerned with as it related, of course, to the American Civil War. In earlier poems that we've studied, I pointed out to you guys that Emily knew a young man who died in a battle of the Civil War, and it devastated her. And of course, the town of Amherst as well. The symbolism of blood, I don't think can be masked. The death of summer can also be, we might say, the death of something important within a country when we have civil war. I said that I think, though, she is channeling Keats's To Autumn, and we've given full lectures on this at learnstrong.net, but I think it's worth reading a poem like this and then coming back to Keats, the great John Keats, and his classic To Autumn. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease. For summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells, and who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped farrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twined flowers. And sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours? Where are the songs of spring? Aye, where are they? Think not of them. Thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river swallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies. And full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the red breast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. Notice it is again the red breast. Finally, to own a poem like this, how do you feel about autumn? Is it one of your favorite times of the year? Or is it sad to you, lugubrious, because it's forecasting the coming of winter? Thank you.